Helmet haters, we know them, we love them, we're eventually going to work with them and encounter them as an adaptive or therapeutic horseback riding instructor. And if you want better tools and techniques to help your student hopefully learn to accept a helmet and go from loathing this to at least tolerating it so that they can participate in mountain activities, then this content is for you. My name is Sabre Popoli, and I'm the owner and founder of Hoof Falls and Footfalls, and I am on a mission to help educate, equip, and empower fellow instructors like you to provide safe, effective, and professional lessons to all ability students that you currently work with. So, in this little chat that we're gonna have here, I'm going to give you some proven methods and techniques that you can use to hopefully take your students from disliking helmets and that helmet potentially being a barrier between them and being able to ride, to at least getting them set up from the very first interaction to where they'll tolerate that helmet so that they can participate in the wonderful activity that is horseback riding. So the methods that I'm going to share with you are things that I have personally used and are tried and true. I left out all the ones that did not work over the years. So you guys are getting the gold and the good things and skipping all the mistakes I've made. And they're also methods that other instructors that I know and I have worked with can also verify work as well. So we're gonna hopefully fast forward through months or years of trial and error and meeting different types of students and condense it into this video where you have a bunch of tips and tools that you can go and apply right away. And even if they are things that you already do, great, maybe give yourself a little pat on the back and just know that you're on the right track and keep doing what you're doing. But I guarantee there's going to be at least one thing that you walk away with, if not more, from this content that you can put in your toolbox as an instructor that's gonna help you feel better equipped to work with students that do not like helmets. And make sure you stay tuned to the very end because the final tip is something that is maybe going to surprise, maybe shock you, and going to be something that you maybe didn't think was going to be brought up as it relates to helping students learn to tolerate helmets as it relates to adaptive horseback riding. All right, let's get into method or tip number one, and that is to lead by example from the very first interaction with your student. So hopefully you are doing a meet and greet or some type of intake with any potential students coming in for both your traditional and also your adaptive or therapeutic riding lessons before you commit to serving that individual and putting them on your lesson schedule. And that is because that very first interaction with that student, even though it's not in a lesson setting, is extremely important to laying the foundation for that student being able to understand and hopefully tolerate helmets. And in this first tip, I want to encourage you to lead by example from that first meeting. So when you go out to the barn and you show them where the helmets are located and you're hopefully getting them fit to a helmet, you should be taking that helmet and leading by example by putting it on you first. Leave that helmet on and then grab a helmet that you think is going to fit your student and go ahead and hand it to that student and ask them to put that helmet on. So they're seeing what that helmet looks like on somebody. They're seeing that it was okay for you to put on and it didn't hurt you or it wasn't uncomfortable. And it's gonna give them some context because we assume everybody has seen someone wear a helmet. They know what helmets do, they know what they look like, but that's an assumption that sometimes gets us into trouble. So we need to lead by example, give it to our student, and then that can really lay some really good foundation for them understanding that this is just kind of part of what we do here and everybody is okay wearing a helmet. Another little kind of side track and side note here is that when your students are putting on that helmet that you hopefully hand to them instead of just reaching out and shoving it on their head, is that you can also tell, can they follow directions? Are they able to put the helmet on their head, or are they not able to? Are they able to do the buckles? So what is their gross motor skill and their fine motor skills like? So that little tidbit of being able to hand a helmet to them, see how they react to it. If they can't do it, how do they react to you then helping them, or a parent or caregiver helping them? That is going to give you a lot of essential information that will then help you know which of the following methods are going to be something that you maybe need to try out or consider or use a combination of, okay? So number one, make sure you demo and you lead by example from the very first interaction. Number two kind of goes along with number one and is really something we should be aware of before we even hand a helmet to a student, but that's going to be all the sensory things that go on with this helmet. So how it sounds, its weight, its smell, what it feels like on the inside. So make sure your helmets are in good condition, they're comfortable, all the padding is laid out appropriately, the Velcro that's sometimes under the padding could be poking through and poking heads, but it could also just be kind of grabbing hair, and that could be a frustrating sensation for that rider. If you have adjustable helmets, which I highly recommend we use because they are really great to help fit to students, make sure that that dial is all the way out before you hand it to the student to put on, because if it's underneath and tightened up and tucked up underneath, we can get it to where it's not comfortable and just not setting that student up for success that very first interaction with that helmet, which we want it to be positive from the start, like I already mentioned. With our helmets, you want to pay attention to the weight and the shape of them. Some of them are more bulky, some of them are a little bit slimmer. So just figure out what brand works for you. I personally like the Ovation schooling helmets. I think they have a good weight. The shape of them, so I have an Ovation and a Troxel. You can see that the shapes are a little different here. I think the Ovation fits most shapes of students, just what I've kind of found over the years. I also find that the weight of these is a little bit better. They hold up really well. The Troxels are good too. This is my personal helmet. This is my one of my loaners that I have for my students, but just have a bulk of helmets that fit most of the students' head shapes well, and then maybe have a few outliers that you can use for different shaped heads. So that's something to be aware of. Those of you that use the sanitary spray in your helmets, be aware of the smell that that creates. Make sure you give them time to air out in between. If you have a student wear a helmet, they put it back, they spray it, and then a student uses it a few minutes later, that strong sanitary spray smell could be something that is really off-putting to a student. I personally, the sanitation smell of like the Lysol spray really bothers me, and I have to have it air out really well. It also makes me a little bit itchy too. I've got sensitive skin, so just be aware of that, of something kind of odd like that might be bothering a student. Hair. Make sure your student's hairstyle is also set up for success for that very first try on of that helmet. So make sure, ponytails are down low. We don't have any like barrettes or little hair ties that are going to be getting pushed on and then creating pressure points, and again creating some type of uncomfortable association with wearing helmets. We don't want that the very first time we put a helmet on, because that could be that very first memory that that student has and then therefore associates with the helmet. So let's not do that. So just be really aware of all the sensory pieces going on with this helmet and try to set your students up for success. So with our helmets, once we hand it to our student, let them put it on, then we need to consider method or tip number 3, which is the fit of the helmet to the student. I see so many times helmets being way too loose and sloppy and wiggling around. One, that is not going to protect your students' heads when it comes to if they do actually come off the horse or something happens and we need to protect the head. But 2, a looser helmet can actually aggravate students that are more sensitive to touch. And most of the students that we work with in adaptive riding actually prefer snug versus loose. So one, it's not only a safety thing, but two, touch-wise, that firmer, deeper pressure, you've probably heard of that, of when we touch, we want to have firm pressure or deep touch or safe touch. Same thing, it goes for the helmet. Make sure it's maybe err on a little bit of that snugger side versus the looser side. A little bit more sensory friendly, also safety, like I mentioned before. So I already mentioned method or tip number 4 a couple of times, but we want to make sure we are using positive wording and positive associations when we are talking about helmets. So we are going to be framing wearing helmets in a positive way of how this is going to allow them to have such a wonderful time riding their horse, and how it's going to keep their wonderful, awesome brain safe, because that is something that we prioritize. So use positive words, associate it to the positive things that they're going to get to do or experience. You can even pull off of past experiences for some of the students you can ask them when they had to wear helmets other times. Some of the students might have really cool stories of, oh, I went ziplining and we had to wear a helmet and it was the coolest thing ever. Or, oh, I love riding my bike and I wear a helmet then. Build off of that. Take that and run with it and use that positive association of them wearing helmets, doing other fun things of, hey, yeah, and now we do that now with our adaptive riding lessons, okay? Tip number 5, method number 5, is probably one of the most underutilized things across the board, not just when it comes to helping our students accept and tolerate helmets, but as riding instructors in general. And this is one of those things where it kind of makes me feel like well, back in the day, we didn't have this technology, but back in the day, we didn't have this awesome, like, portable screen and computer and all of this. So take photos and videos showing your students what it's like to put on helmets, wear helmets, go get on a horse, ride around, get off the horse, and when we take the helmet off. The end of the activity, or the end of taking that helmet off, is a very, very important thing that we need to let our students know when the thing of wearing a helmet that they might detest at that time is going to end, so that they know that this thing isn't going to be stuck on their head forever. So photos and videos, make a little visual script of when we go get the helmet, when we put the helmet on, when we buckle the chin strap, when we check the fit, go get on the horse, go get off, take it off, put it away, all of that. Sending a little visual script to the parents beforehand, if you already know, if they give you a warning or a heads up that they might be avoidant to helmets, that can set that student up for success before you do that intake. So again, you're kind of laying that foundation. Showing a photo or a video is something too that on the way to lessons, they can watch in the car and refresh their memory of, hey, this is just something that we're gonna have to do, and this is part of lessons, and it refreshes that memory until we build all those new connections and actually make a new memory in our brain, and we learn that that's part of riding. And that takes time, because we literally have to change how our brains are formatted when we're building memories. So photos and videos. It could be something that you take just in general of staff or of other students. Maybe you have the parent or another helper take photos and videos of the student actually doing it so that they can see themselves doing it after class and on the way to their next lesson. Tons of different ways that you can do it, but totally underutilized resource here. So keep that in your back pocket for not just helmets, but other skills as well that you are teaching. All right, method or tip number 6 is to keep expired helmets that we should no longer be using because they have been in use for 5 years, or maybe there was a bump or a fall off of them and we need to retire that helmet. Keep those helmets, put a big spray paint X on them or something to know that they are not safe for mounted activities, but use those as loaners so that students can take them home and go practice with the helmets. Or maybe a potential student of, hey, here's something you can go take, work on it, practice it at home. build some positive associations with it outside of the barn. Take it to OT or PT or any other therapy, and maybe the therapist can also help them work on integrating that helmet. So keep your expired helmets, please mark them, make sure that they are very clearly noted of why we're no longer using them for mounted activities, but keep them as loaners to give them as practice for your students to take home. Alrighty, so tip number 7, method number 7, is something that you need to tactfully do. It's usually not one of my first options, but it is something I keep in my back pocket for if we've tried everything, and that is to have the instructor and or any support peoples, so horse leader, sidewalkers, anyone like that, they wear a helmet with that student during the lesson, and we make it like a group activity of everybody puts it on, we wear it, the rider gets on, they ride, they get off, everybody takes it off. Sometimes doing it together as a group makes that student more comfortable about wearing that helmet. We can show them, hey, look, we're all keeping our helmets on, so you're gonna keep your helmet on as well until everybody has feet on the ground, and then we can take the helmet off. So remember giving them that end point of when they do get to take that helmet off. This is something though of why I use it kind of as a last resort is that I don't necessarily want to have that be something that we do forever and ever. It might be something we might try for 3 or 4 lessons and then start phasing out of not having the instructor or the leaders or the sidewalkers wear the helmet because 1, we may not have enough helmets, especially if it's like a group lesson, and 2, I think it's a great thing to teach our students that sometimes they might do something that's different than those people surrounding them, but at first we could come together as a group, support each other, do it together, but that might phase out over time because sometimes that happens in everyday life. So just be careful of that. Make sure you're being verbal about, hey, this is going to be for the first few lessons. We're going to do it with you so you can learn all the good things about it. We'll support you. But then don't be afraid to start phasing it out over time. And maybe you phase it out by if that student has, say, a team of 3, so a horse leader and 2 sidewalkers, they're all wearing helmets. Maybe the next week, only 2 of the 3 have helmets on. And then in a couple weeks, only 1 of the 3 has helmets on. And then eventually nobody, okay? So it just takes time and repetition for students to get used to stuff. So that 7th method is something I keep in my back pocket, but it's not my first go-to. But I've had it work before, and I've heard other instructors have had that method work too as kind of a last resort. Method or tip number 8 is something, again, that we kind of assume our students are probably doing, but we don't really know if they are or not until we actually point it out to them. And that is that their peers or other students are wearing helmets as well during the lesson, and that's just part of what we do. If they are in a private lesson, that may not be super helpful. Maybe you can show them a video of another student riding, going back to tip number 5 of taking photos and videos beforehand. But if they're in a semi-private, so 2 students or even a group lesson, so 3 or more, then actually pointing it out to them and maybe asking them what color is the helmet that student is wearing, or is it the same color as yours, something along those lines. Drawing attention to a peer or a fellow student wearing a helmet could be beneficial as well, because again, they're just seeing that that's part of what we do out here in the barn. But don't assume that they are seeing another student wearing that helmet and being aware of that happening. We need to shift their focus to notice that thing on their peer. All right, we've got 2 left. So method number 9 is to be really strategic about when you put on or take off helmets. And what I mean by strategic timing is that if you have a student that is resistant to helmets, we might want to take that helmet with us to the base of wherever you mount that rider. So like for me, I use a mounting platform. Some other programs might use a platform or a ramp or whatever it is. Take that helmet with you. have that student call their horse up, say, okay, before we get on, we do our helmet. Oh, look, they're doing a tack check of your horse. Let's do your tack check of the helmet, put it on, and then get them on that horse. So maybe limit the time that the student has to have the helmet on before they actually get to go get on that horse and go ride, and maybe be a little bit distracted by that riding activity. And then being very clear of, okay, we're going to dismount. Once your feet hit the ground, you can take that helmet off right away. So that's sometimes like a negotiable point of, would I like the student to have the helmet on more in advance and until they walk out of the arena? Yes, but is that something I could maybe be, a little bit giving on to get that helmet on, get the student on, get those positive associations built? Yeah, I'm willing to kind of work with that there. So tip or method number 10, and remember I said that the last one might shock you on what it is to remember that if you, as the instructor, have given it your everything, so you've tried everything at least once, and then the ones that maybe were going to potentially work like 2 or 3 times in a row, and the family is also on board, so you've given them a loaner, they've tried it at home, they've taken it to the other therapies, they've used positive wording, they've shown the student photos and videos at home and on their way. As long as you and the family have given it your best go, if that student is still resistant to the helmet, that might be their way of saying, no, thank you, this is not my activity. And I know that's really hard for us to hear as instructors because we think horseback riding is such a wonderful activity. We sometimes forget that the activity that we teach is sometimes just not the best fit for everybody. And students who are verbal and are able to explain what they're feeling and why they're feeling could tell us like, hey, I don't like this and I want to do something else. I want to do soccer, I want to do dance, or whatever it is. That's great. But some of the students that we work with in adaptive or therapeutic horseback riding, they don't have the ability or the means to communicate that in a verbal way that is very cut and dry and clear to us. They might be communicating through the resistance of a helmet, and if they do know cause and effect of, okay, if I put this helmet on, that means I'm gonna ride, that could be their way of saying, look, I really am not okay with this, and I know that this helmet equals riding, I don't wanna do this. Sometimes we have to advocate for that student, and if we have tried everything, and if the parents have tried everything and it's still a no-go, then we need to listen to that student. And I'm not saying that we just give up right away. Like I said, you need to try everything. All the methods I've listed, let me know if I've missed one and you have one that also works that you've tried. Drop in the comments. I would love to hear. I know other instructors would love to hear and learn from it. But if you've given it a go, the family's given it a go, it just might be your way or your student's way of saying no thank you. Okay? All right, so final tips that relate to safety, or I guess really final reminders. One is that as adaptive riding instructors or even traditional riding instructors, we need to be using equestrian helmets. We should not be putting students up on horses wearing bike helmets, skateboarding helmets, skiing helmets, batting helmets, whatever. I've seen a whole bunch of different things because these equestrian horseback riding helmets are built and tested to withstand the forces that heads are going to experience when they hit the ground or hit other items from the back of a horse. So they have been tested in that way. Other helmets, bike helmets, skateboard, skiing, those impact in different ways, and so we need to make sure that we're using the equipment that is appropriate to our sport. Please, please, please do not put kids or anybody up on a horse in a bike helmet because that is the thing that they tolerate, okay? Also, another thing, at least here inside the US, but it's a professional opinion of mine, remember that a full team with a student, so that means that they have a horse leader and 2 sidewalkers next to them, that does not negate the need for a student to have a helmet in adaptive or therapeutic horseback riding. We're not going to get into the whole therapy discussion, hippotherapy side, when it's directly performed by a PT or an OT or a SLP, not even going to get there, but for us as adaptive horseback riding instructors, a full team support of people around that student doesn't mean that we get a free pass of that student needing to wear that helmet. That might mean that that student is not suitable at that time or potentially ever for adaptive horseback riding, so mounted activities. Maybe we need to shift to groundwork for a while, work through it, or maybe we need to refer them out to a professional or a therapist that can help that student work through their dislike of helmets and maybe learn to tolerate it. So let me know which of these methods you have personally tried and have worked for you. Are there any methods that are completely new to you and you've never used before but are gonna keep them in your toolbox to use the next time you encounter a student that hates helmets? And I'd love to hear from you. And also let me know if you have any other topics that relate to adaptive or therapeutic horseback riding or groundwork as well. And I would love to hear what you want to learn about, any struggles that you're encountering as an instructor, because Hoof Falls and Footfalls is here to help educate, equip, and encourage instructors to work through any of the struggles that they're encountering as instructors, and also help you guys skip all the years of trial and error that I went through and hopefully give you information that's going to accelerate your ability to teach students of different abilities and provide super safe, quality, and professional lessons to every person that you work with.